Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the February 19th, 2025 Eugene Urban Renewal Agency work session. Thank you for joining us in this virtual meeting format. For work sessions like this one, there is no opportunity for public comment. Those wishing to access the meeting can do so by watching the live stream available on our website, the broadcast on Comcast Channel 21, or by calling into one of the phone numbers listed for this meeting on the public webcasts and meetings materials webpage of the City of Eugene website. Thank you again for joining us. And with that, I will call the February 19th, 2025 Urban Renewal Agency work session to order. I will now turn to our agency director to introduce today's topic, a work session on downtown riverfront update.
Thank you, Mayor. And that's exactly what we're talking about. Pretty excited about it. It's been a while since we've had an update on the downtown riverfront, and we have a great team of folks here to walk us through that. And I believe I'm turning it over to our Community Development Director, Will Dowdy, kick us off.
Okay, yes, indeed. Thank you. My name is Will Dowdy. I'm the Community Development Director and Mayor Agency Board. It's great to be here to talk with you about the Riverfront Urban Renewal District in 2025. I'm going to share my screen. And let's try this. Okay, looks like that's working. Okay, I am joined by Emily Proudfoot from Parks and Open Space and Katie Marwitz from Engineering. We're going to share information about projects for the board to consider funding with tax increment funds. I'll start, though, first with an update on what's been happening in the districts. And then we'll walk through 3 projects eligible for urban renewal funding: affordable housing, transmission lines rerouting, and sidewalk improvements on East Broadway, and close with a property for the agency to transfer to the city. All of these are projects we've talked about in previous conversations in some form or other. Nothing here is brand new, but now we've finally reached a point where we can move forward with implementation, so we're here to talk about funding. Like I said, I'll start with an update. Over the last 12 months or so, the downtown riverfront neighborhood has seen substantial transformation. This is the result of years of planning and hard work. No better place to start than here. The first residential building by the Atkins Dame team, Heartwood, opened last year with 95 units and has reached full occupancy. It has been a dream decades in the making to have Eugenians living in this neighborhood, in this spot so close to the river. And the second building, Portal, is already nearing completion with 130 units coming soon. Pre-leasing is supposed to start in the next couple of months, and then you can expect new people living here in July. The plaza at the downtown riverfront park has been under construction this winter. This is a 1-acre addition to the beautiful park that's already an important part of our river path system. The hardscape gathering area will allow for larger events and celebrations to take advantage of this unique location, and the play features will keep it a fun, dynamic place to be. Get ready to celebrate in June. And as you well know, but for the benefit of anyone watching, City Hall has been open and fully functional. Every day, there's city workers and community members going in and out, as well as a full schedule of council meetings and other events. Meanwhile, on the west side of the Urban Renewal District, we've been working on the downtown fee assistance and accelerated MUPD, or multi-unit property tax exemption. These are programs that apply to the downtown core, and that includes a handful of blocks that are also in the Riverfront District. You put these programs in place to support more housing units in the heart of downtown. All of the administrative rules are written and are currently out for public comment. These programs are going live at the end of this month, and we are talking with property owners and developers about the opportunities these programs represent. Finally, in the coming attractions category, Atkins Dame have submitted 2 MUPD applications that will be in front of you soon. The developers have been focusing on bringing forward housing on these 2 properties, riverfront parcels 9 and 10. And you can see them here on the stretch along Annie Mims and along the plaza and right along the river. You've previously seen and approved a MUPD application for parcel 9, but Atkins Dame has worked to retool that project to become something that will be financially viable in the current economy. They have submitted a new MUPD application for parcel 9 as well as one for parcel 10. And acting as City Council, you will have the opportunity to review these in a work session scheduled for March 12th. And I just need to say, after so many years of planning, it is a treat to have updates for you about what's going on in the riverfront that involves buildings and projects under construction and buildings that are opening. So with that, now let's dive into the 3 projects for you to consider funding with tax increment funds. Parcel 2. We are excited to bring you a plan for Parcel 2 that could result in affordable housing being the next project to break ground at the riverfront. As long as we've been working on this project, this body, both as council and agency board, has firmly prioritized the inclusion of affordable housing in this neighborhood. You've specified that you want to see a minimum of 75 units available to households earning up to 60% of area median income. And you've identified this parcel, Parcel 2, as the site for that development to happen, here at the northwest corner of Mill Street and 4th Avenue. Homes for Good has partnered with Atkins Dame, and together they are proposing to bring this project to life. The 75 rental housing units would be owned and operated by Homes for Good. Atkins Dame would be involved at the beginning to manage the design and construction for the building. Here is a concept sketch from the intersection of 4th and Mill looking northwest. The building design will adhere to the neighborhood design guidelines that the city co-wrote with Atkins Dame. And you can tell from this drawing that the design is very similar to the market rate building currently under construction across the street. In fact, the proposal is to bring the same design and construction team, Sarah Architects and Essex Construction, and have them roll directly into this project. The site has a 16-foot hill on the property from the front and 4th Avenue to the alley in the back. So the ground floor is proposed as entry and core building functions. And then the units themselves are split on the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th floors. Here are floor plans that you can see. And you can see on the left, the ground floor plan. Again, that's kind of just half the building nestled up into the grade. And that's the lobby and the other core functions for the building. And then you can see those 2nd and 3rd and 4th floors where the units would be. Because of that grade change, there's an opportunity to work with the topography and create a small parking area off the alley at the 2nd floor level. And then additional parking would be available at Parkview Terrace. Homes for Good has a property that's just a block away, and they're looking at the availability of parking there to serve residents in this building. The project would be a combination of 1-bedroom units and studios. The 75 to 77 units would be available to households at or below 60% of area median income, and the affordability period would be a minimum of 30 years. In the last few years, we've discussed this project as being an urban renewal project and one that does not compete with other projects across the community for the limited resources we have available locally. Instead of using our federal CDBG funds to purchase a property and give it to a housing provider, the agency owns the property already and can give it to the housing provider. And instead of having the developer apply for our home funds, our affordable housing trust fund, and our city fee assistance, the opportunity here is to leave all of those funds untouched and use urban renewal in lieu of those limited and competitive local funds. The projected need for urban renewal funds is $7.5 million. And part of the action in front of you today is to approve up to that amount of tax increment funds for this project. You may recall that over the last few years, we have estimated this urban renewal investment to be anywhere from $1 million to $8 million. When we included this project in the plan amendment last year, we had estimated that the need would end up roughly in the middle at about $5 million. But with construction costs still escalating, interest rates still elevated, and high operating costs for affordable housing, particularly around insurance, the project need in the proposal is back to that upper end of that range at $7.5 million. Further complicating this project is a combination of the site topography, the compact site conditions, and the urban character and vision for this neighborhood. If you approve the funds for this project, the development team would submit this project to the Oregon Housing and Community Services, enter the queue for state funds. This is where we would hit a big unknown. Like the majority of large affordable housing projects, this one would be primarily funded with money that comes from the state. And the newly instituted Oregon Centralized Application Process, the acronym for that is ORCA, does not give us a good indication of how quickly we could expect to see the state commitment. Our goal would be to do everything in our control, both as a city and for the local developers, everything in our control to move the project quickly and position the project as best as we can to receive state funds in a timely manner. Homes for Good brings considerable expertise in working with the state, and we'll rely on that expertise to help navigate the process. The development team has laid out a schedule showing their best case scenario with residents moving in early 2028, but we won't schedule any ribbon cuttings until we understand the state's timeline, which depends on a combination of legislative funding and the extent to which OHCS would prioritize projects that have investments from local government. Finally, if you choose to approve funds for this project, you can look forward to seeing an application for a 20-year LRPD or a low-income rental housing property tax exemption, which importantly is not a constrained fund, and so it's not a competitive resource, which is why it's something that we would propose as part of the resources available for this project. So at this point, I will pass the torch to my colleagues in Public Works, who will talk about two other projects that the agency board can consider as opportunities to advance the goals and objectives of the Riverfront Urban Renewal District.
Hello and good afternoon, Mayor and Agency Board. My name is Emily Proudfoot, and I'm the Principal Landscape Architect in our Parks Planning Office. And I've also been the project manager for all of the park-related work on the riverfront since 2017. So I'm here to talk to you today about a project we've been working on with EWEB for a little while, and it's associated with rerouting transmission lines out of the riverfront park area and out of our plan area. So I think I'll start with just a brief description of the project proposal. In this image, you can see two different alignments. So the proposal is that the existing alignment is the blue line, and associated, the dots are the kind of the poles that exist now, or electrical towers. They run from a point at the kind of northeast end of the Cook Canal and Alton Baker Park, and then west and across the river to the big tower that's currently in our riverfront park, and then south again to a large pole that then immediately serves the substation, which provides power to a good part of downtown. So this is a really like important utility corridor from a service standpoint. And the proposal is that these poles and lines would get moved away from the Canoe Canal in Alton Baker Park, more to the south and east. And you can see the yellow lines there, the proposed alignment. These are very high concept levels. So I think some of these poles could move and be much more refined as we would move in toward design in collaboration with EWEB. But it would then run along Day Island Road and then cross the river on more of a right angle and directly serve the substation with a larger and a newer pole. So what this project does is it removes the tower and service lines from our plan area, and it also realigns this important service away from the waterway in Alton Baker Park, which is definitely helpful for habitat and natural area reasons. All of the realignment is within the developed portion of in West Alton Baker Park. So it doesn't go into the Wheelamoot. Let's see here. So the total proposed cost for all of this work is $2.4 million, of which EWEB would pay for $1.5 million, and that would include all of the work in Alton Baker Park. And then the agency component would be up to $900,000 for removal of the existing power utility poles and lines and replacement with a new power pole. The location of the power pole is on a very steep bank, and the sort of the structural requirements of that, I think, are part of the reason that this price is a little bit high. It's a very narrow area, and I think again, a very critical area for serving our downtown with utilities. So next slide, please. So there's definitely mutual project benefits for us and for the agency, for the plan area. I think, big picture, the agency did set a goal about a year ago, and one of these goals was to protect and enhance key riparian areas along the river. So I think removal of this infrastructure and replacement with more resilient infrastructure definitely meets that goal. So currently these transmission lines and towers, they're aging, they have ongoing maintenance issues. They obstruct some views, and I think they're not entirely compatible with our new park use. I think more importantly, there are new seismic standards for this type of utility infrastructure. I think the alignment will definitely be sort of more in alignment with current and future uses of the park. And I think most importantly, we've seen some significant destruction of this type of transmission lines and towers upriver in our really terrible ice storms. And so, replacement and doing so in partnership with EWEB is a really great opportunity that I think we should take advantage of, and I think meets a lot of the goals of the plan area. So from a timeline standpoint, do you want to click the next slide? Yeah, so if the agency board approved funding allocation now or this year, then EWEB would begin budgeting and planning for the work this year as well. And so it gets the project into they've prioritized it, and with the approval of this funding, they'll put it into their capital improvement plan. Design would begin in 2026, and then construction would begin by mid-2028. And this is a tentative schedule, but I'll also add that the pricing that they provided us also included, escalation of construction costs over time. So the pricing was estimated for a 2028 build, which I think is a helpful consideration. So next slide. All right, so that's the end of my portion. And now I'll turn it over to my colleague, Katie Marwitz from engineering, to talk about the East Broadway pedestrian and accessibility improvements project.
Thanks, Emily. And thank you for welcoming me, Mayor and Agency Board. My name is Katie Marwitz. I work in Public Works Engineering, where I'm a principal civil engineer. And today I'll be talking to you about the upcoming East Broadway Enhancements Project. So East Broadway is an essential road for connecting Eugene's downtown core with the University of Oregon. And if you've driven down East Broadway during the school year, you've experienced the number of people that live and walk along the corridor. So in the aerial, you can see the general project work area is outlined with a dashed line, and it will be between Mill Street on the west. So I think about that as the Whole Foods intersection, to Alder Street on the east. And while talking about this today, I think it's important that I want to point out that this project is distinct and separate from the Franklin Boulevard project that you've heard about, that's just off the page, kind of down to the bottom of the right. And that project starts at 11th Avenue. So this Broadway corridor has seen tremendous growth over the last decade, with over 1,000 new housing units, with still more being planned. We know that growth in housing is very important for the community, but with continued growth means that there are more people and more stress on the pedestrian environment along East Broadway. Some of the recent large-scale development is so new that it's still shown under construction here in this aerial image. And to help ground us in the aerial and the project area, I just want to walk through the corridor briefly so that we're all on the same page. So we start with Whole Foods on the west, and then the Standard is across from Whole Foods on the north side. That's the most recent development. And then moving east, we have the Union on the south side. Continuing east, the 515 was one of the first larger scale developments along East Broadway. Then moving to Hilliard, we have the Rive, which is right at Hilliard and Broadway. To help show the growth more visually, this slide shows the progression at the west end of the corridor. So starting with the picture in the upper left in 2019, you can see the old Travel Lodge. The utility poles are the anchoring point in each one of these photos, and they provide a really good reference point. The upper right photo is from November 2020, when the site work had just started for the Union. So not long after this 2020 photo, the southernmost travel lane, so the eastbound travel lane, was closed for the duration of that construction, and it remained closed for just over a year with minimal impact to vehicular traffic. The lower left photo is from 2022 that shows the completion of the Union. That's on the south side of Broadway. And then the lower right shows the progress of the Standard in June 2024. This next slide is a brief reminder about existing conditions along East Broadway. You may remember that during the 2023 Riverfront Urban Renewal Plan process, nearly the entire section of East Broadway here on the south side was included in the blight analysis. And having these deteriorated sidewalks discourages people from walking as they feel less safe on narrow, broken, or uneven sidewalk. And in several places, you must go around utility poles, which brings you extremely close to traffic. And for those less able, there are sections of sidewalk where a wheelchair or other mobility device barely fits or really struggles to roll. So next I want to dive in and talk about the project itself. And from the engineering perspective, this is certainly for me the easiest part to talk about. So the basis of this project is to rehabilitate the roadway surface. So this section of Broadway was included in the voter-approved 2017 pavement bond measure. And that bond measure included funding for paving and then also for sidewalk access ramp upgrades between Mill Street and 11th Avenue. And then this project was also identified in the Move Huge process that helped create the list of active transportation projects that were associated with the more recent 2022 voter-approved bond measure that has allocated money for walking, biking, and safety. So during the scoping of this project, we identified the opportunity to make this proposed larger improvements to really change the pedestrian experience along the corridor and to improve that really important connection between downtown and the University of Oregon. So in partnership with community development staff, we agreed that urban renewal was a great mechanism to help make this change. So if fully funded, the project would widen and improve the sidewalk on the south side of East Broadway, providing better access for all users. So to accomplish this, the southern vehicular lane will be repurposed and rebuilt into a wider setback sidewalk. So removal of that travel lane will allow for the addition of a planting strip sized to accommodate large street trees, which will contribute to our urban tree canopy, reduce heat island effect, and create an environment that's more welcoming to pedestrians along the corridor. And as I mentioned in those previous photos, the removal of that lane was piloted during the construction of the Union and was in place for just about a year. Then in addition to that, we've also completed additional traffic analysis for the corridor just to verify that that lane removal is viable. And just briefly, other elements of the project will include, ADA improvements that I mentioned briefly, conversion of the pedestrian hybrid beacon to a pedestrian signal, and other paving related signing and striping. Next, I'd like to give an update about the project scheduling and then the ongoing public outreach process. So engineering staff partnered with community development staff began one-on-one business outreach in 2024. While most of the interactions were generally positive, some of the comments and concerns they received were around short-term parking and delivery, and those are things that we're going to be able to address in the project design. More broad-reaching community outreach has started and will be ongoing throughout this year, and we recognize it's very, very important to keep the traveling public aware of the upcoming scheduled and anticipated impacts during construction itself. So the project is working through our normal design process for public works capital projects, which includes design reviews at 30%, 60%, and 90% completion. We've already also had extensive utility coordination discussions. The design itself right now is at 60% review phase. We haven't completed the final planting plan yet, but it's our intention that we will not be impacting any of the trees, either the existing mature trees that are on the west end near Whole Foods, or impacting the trees that are existing along the north side of Broadway already. We should be ready for construction this summer. We anticipate the project will take 4 to 6 months to complete, and we are planning to bring on a contractor early through the CMGC process, which stands for Construction Manager General Contractor. We're planning on bringing them early to help us finalize staging and phasing, as well as get long lead time items ordered as soon as we can. So in conclusion, I kind of want to jump back to that higher level project summary to talk about the urban renewal specific proposal. So if fully funded at the requested $800,000 level, the project will widen the sidewalk on the south side, improving accessibility and placemaking. It will result in the removal of the travel lane and would allow for a planter strip and street trees that have multiple benefits. So just in summary, really the key message here is the project will enhance connectivity to downtown, which supports pedestrian activity in the heart of the community.
When you look at the full project costs, together these three projects represent nearly $40 million of work. Now, out of that, the combined urban renewal portion would be about $9.2 million, or up to $9.2 million, which then would leverage state funds, private debt, EWEB funds, and the city's capital project funding. The Riverfront District currently has about $75 million of tax increment available. If you choose to approve funding for all three of these projects, there would be about $65 million going forward. The River Guides, the advisory group of the Riverfront Urban Renewal District, recommended that you approve the funds for all three projects in the amounts included here. I'll close out our presentation with one last action for you to consider, and I don't have a slide for you to look at, but this is a nice picture. There's a life cycle to these urban renewal projects, and what begins as a request for tax increment funds eventually becomes a completed project, and the agency gets to step out of the picture. Years ago, the agency purchased the land for the plaza from EWEB with the rest of the riverfront site, and you approved the use of funds to transform it into something that complements the rest of the downtown riverfront park. With construction drawing to a close, the agency can hand this off to the city. The redevelopment work is done, and it's time for the day in, day out operations and maintenance that the city does. Property transfers require direction from the board. We're asking you to approve funding for these projects in line with the direction you set forth last year in the plan amendment for the riverfront. Acting as the agency board, you can choose to take action today on these topics. A motion is prepared for you to approve the use of tax increment for the projects in attachment B and the transfer of property in attachment C. Emily, Katie, and myself are happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, staff, for that presentation. Lots of great information. I will now open the floor for agency board discussion, and I have Councillor Groves, Councillor Slanka, Councillor Clark in the queue. Councillor Groves.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, staff, for the presentation. I always get excited to see what is going on in our riverfront and our downtown. To my questions, the first question, what number of parking spaces will be available for the portal development? It doesn't look like very much.
I don't have the specific number for portal. I know that there's tuck under parking existing or built into the site, and they're working on managing that. The plans for 3A, the building that shares the same block, includes underground parking or understructure parking. And so between some temporary parking and that future development, that's where they're planning on accomplishing the needs that they have for the tenant. I should say the requirements are not, they far exceed any requirements we have. So it's really a question of their market demand for parking.
Can you say whether it would be enough for one per unit?
I believe they're trying to exceed that.
Okay, great, thank you. And to the power lines, I guess this would be for Emily. How much more would it cost to actually just bury the lines and remove the overhead hazard? I know that under certain conditions that electricity actually can travel from the wires to ground, and it's an area that will be being used by people. And that's always been a concern of mine, both from a safety standpoint, but also from an aesthetic standpoint.
I completely understand. So I actually don't know the number, but what I can say is that it was something we explored very early on in the development of the Riverfront Park. So when we were laying back the bank and tearing everything up, that was like the moment, right, to really figure out, hey, can we put these underground? And at the time, we talked to EWEB about it, and they just didn't think it was a feasibility, and it had something to do with the amount of insulation or the I just can't remember the technical pieces of it, and I can go back and get that amount for you. But it really, really what they preferred, and this was EWEB's real preference, was to really just get it to a single pole that was directly serving the the substation and then relocating it off the waterway. They have a lot of really weird like bird activity that makes maintenance of those lines along the waterway really challenging. And so this was a good opportunity for them from that perspective. So if you wanted that number, I could look back, but again, it was a deep consideration that we talked to them a lot about quite a few years ago.
I understand eWeb's hesitancy, but I would like to see what the numbers are. I mean, you know, in my mind, when I voted for expanding this, I was hoping expanding the funding for the urban renewal district. I was hoping we could figure out a way to get that bearing of the lines in there. So thank you. I would appreciate seeing that. And I'm guessing some of my colleagues might be interested too.
I'll see what I can find out.
What are the plans for the additional 8 acres that we got from the UO in the land swap for the area around Autzen?
That's another great question. And for now, I think we're planning on managing it as natural area, but I can also go back and check in with my colleagues and see where we're at on that planning piece right now. But I think for now, it's just really planned as kind of open space for now.
Well, that's good enough for now. I just would like to know where we think that's going to go in the future, because that's that was really once in a lifetime opportunity to add to the 16 acres we already have. What effect does the removal of the vehicle travel lane on the south side of Franklin Boulevard have on traffic flow?
Yeah, thank you for that question. So that was one of the pieces that we want to make sure that we studied, not only seeing it when it was piloted, because we saw it when it was piloted during that construction, but hired a consultant that we work with often to say, hey, is this viable? They said, yes, it is. And then more empirically, we can say as we travel down the corridor, what I observe is that usually the lane that's closest to the curb is very, very busy as people are trying to position themselves to take the right at Patterson. That will still be the case. Just those 2 lanes will be shifted over as we drive down that way now. You'll see the southern lane is very busy. The middle lane has the people that are choosing to do through. And usually that 3rd lane right now is fairly open. So we've observed and we've studied and said, hey, the corridor can handle it in 2 lanes. And we think it's doable to remove that so that we can enhance that pedestrian space.
Do we have anything in writing that quantifies traffic flow? You know, again, I haven't done any kind of a scientific study, but I drive that stretch fairly regularly, and it always seems congested to me unless it's the middle of the night.
We certainly have the information because we have a report from the consultant who did that study for us. So I certainly could follow up with some of the numbers from that.
I'm just interested in the numbers. I don't need a full report or anything, but just so we kind of get a sense on that, because when people start complaining about lack of traffic flow, it's going to be to us. And then my last question actually isn't really a question. It's more just a point of concern. So we have $74.8 million in funding that we're going to have in our URD for the riverfront. And the proposal is to spend $64.4 million of that really in the first year that we extended the funding. That's going to only leave us, by my simple math, $10.4 million for the remainder of the life of the urban renewal district. Is that correct?
I can answer that. I think you have my numbers backwards. Sorry for not saying that more clearly. So the combined projects today would be about $9 million of spending. So then you would have about $65 million going forward to spend on all of the other priorities over the coming years.
Okay, great. That takes care. I was just concerned if we were only going to be left with 10 million. So thank you very much for all your responses, and good work.
Councilor Zelenka.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I'm so excited about the affordable housing project, My Homes for Good. It seems like a very exciting project, the cost increase seems in keeping with everything else, so that's not really a surprise. So that I'm still supportive of it. And that seems par for the course these days. And I would like to point out again only that the only affordable housing we get is subsidized housing. don't get any market-based housing. So we get more affordable housing. So to get more affordable housing, we need more access to dollars or increase the dollars that we have for the subsidies. Otherwise, we're just not going to get more affordable housing. And this is a great use for that. So I'm very supportive of that project. On the transmission line alignment, I worked in the utility business for over 3 decades, and transmission projects are so expensive. They are way more than people think they should be. Like when we were talking years ago, the estimate was undergrounding just a simple line is about $1 million a mile, and that's an old estimate. I think it's way more than that now. If you have towers like we have here, it's way more. And then if you're trying to go under a river, you just made it go from way more to astronomical. So I think that UWeb's we're going to get numbers back that are going to be pretty darn obvious that that's not going to be something that we want to spend our money on. With concern about all the rate increases that we have that are occurring, especially at eWeb and other places, I'm very concerned about the dollars we spend on projects that are not necessary or not electrical reliability projects. But there's always an exception to the rule. And this, for me, is one of them, which is that this is really a legacy project. The park will be here for generations for people to enjoy. And it's and it's something that I think we need to enhance as much as we possibly can. And this project's never going to get cheaper. It's only going to go up in cost. So do it sooner than later. So I'm supportive of that project as well. On the East Broadway, when they put in those tall buildings, those are great pictures, by the way. We created this canyon, the Broadway Canyon. To me, it's pretty ugly. It's not very aesthetically pleasing, but it's also very busy and it's not super safe, and it's because of how busy it is. And so, anything we can do to make this corridor more appealing and safer and more accessible, I'm in favor of. So I'm in favor of that project as well.
Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Mayor, and big thank you to staff for the presentation. I was one of those that was a big advocate and very much in favor of us choosing the higher number, in this case of 75 million for the district's expansion, largely because I want to see it go predominantly towards increased amount of housing in the area. And I'd like us to reach and go beyond, current planning to really make an impact. And so I'm certainly in favor of the first project listed as, for all the reasons Alan mentioned too, and more. I think that's a very good use of these funds for this. One of the things I have constantly harped on is my opinion that tax increment financing as a tool was created in the first place in order to add to property value of privately owned things that in the long run create a more healthy and a larger tax base. It's borrowing from tomorrow to build a bigger tax base sooner. And I have been a fairly constant critic of our use of tax increment financing locally, because it's my belief we tend to use it towards public projects that don't do as much as they could to enhance our tax base. And so I'm less in favor of the third project. The first two I'm fine with. I hope we can sustain a vote to vote on them separately rather than all as one fell swoop. But I appreciate the presentation very much.
Councillor Leach.
Thank you. And thank you to staff for the presentation and to Will for the briefing yesterday. I think my first question was, hey, we designed this as these buckets and in our priorities, what was our biggest priority? And that's housing. And, to go along with Councillor Clark, my it's like, is this the money that we spend that could go to more housing? But the reality is that we're really transforming the Riverfront District as a whole to make it livable and walkable and enjoyable, and to attract people who are going to, be living there. And that area that we're, doing the walkability improvements. Like, if you haven't walked that area, you should go, and because it is honestly kind of sketchy. It's not super attractive. It's not easy to navigate. And when we're talking about connecting the campus to downtown, there's going to be a lot more motion when we add in wider sidewalks and more street trees. And I think that connector piece is incredibly important as we bring in a lot more people into the riverfront, to support downtown businesses, to add, additional flow. And so I really look forward to seeing the improvements on that street, and I look forward to walking down that new improved sidewalk myself. And yeah, I just think in 10 years, we're just going to see an entirely new, transformed riverfront, and I'm incredibly excited to get to experience that. So excellent work. I'm happy to support these projects, and let's get to work. Thank you.
Councillor Kaczynski.
Hi, thank you. And thank you to staff for these great presentations and for all your work on these projects, which are really helping Eugene right now. Just to clarify a point, the 1,000 units of new housing that we saw pictures of going in there, those are private development, right? Those are, regular developers that aren't subsidized affordable housing developers building those units. That's correct?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. And then the pedestrian improvements really support that private investment in our community by making those properties more appealing, since residents from those properties will have an easier time walking to downtown if they want to walk to the Whole Foods, if they want to do something like that, that will enhance their experience there.
Yes, I think it will enhance their experience there, but I think one of the other big pieces is really the connectivity. I think there's we're trying to present, there's a lot of benefits to it, right? A lot of the connectivity, people that walk through there, people that want to get lunch through there, people going to Whole Foods, people that live there, all of the users is kind of the intended group, the target audience of the improvements.
Okay. And so it's, again, not just that audience, but it is something that it enhances for the private development that has gone in there as well. So, all right. Well, and again, thank you again. And I'm really looking forward to all the new housing that's coming up right around here.
Councillor Yeh.
Thanks, Mayor, and thanks, staff as well. I wanted to start with just being so glad to see where we've come on this project. It seemed when we started so long ago that it would take forever to see something, and now there are things sprouting out of the ground, and it's just very transformative. And I just couldn't be more pleased with how things are going. And I really appreciate our approach. This is kind of the first large project like this I have been involved in, and the way staff and council have approached this as not an island, but as integrating it into the community at large has really been a smart move. And I think the things that you have brought us kind of reflect that kind of outlook on how we're doing this, in that it's not just about this tiny little part of our community, but it's about how, like you said, it connects, and how people are going to get out and in and engage with our businesses and engage with the river. And I just think that's been a really smart approach, and has made it more successful in the long run. So I just want to appreciate that. I'm in support of these projects. And I also just want to say it's great when we can work with our partners like eWeb to bring something to fruition. And they're not here today, but I really appreciate them working with us on this project and finding a way for us to combine our resources when we all have limited ones to do something together that we couldn't do alone. So thank you.
Councillor Groves.
Thank you, Mayor. Just one quick follow-up regarding the work on Franklin and the taking of a travel lane. Have police and fire been consulted on this? Franklin is a major response corridor.
Yeah, and I want to say yes, we have started having a lot of conversations about Franklin, but really we're just at the beginning of the design process for that. And I know we're going to have a number of more conversations as we really dive in and we have the consultant team on board and we start in that. So I don't think we're quite at the place yet to kind of share the specifics of like, hey, where are we on Franklin? But we will have lots and lots of those discussions. And I believe that we have more planned discussions and presentations here to council in this next coming year to give more updates and status updates as we move that process along.
Updates are great. I just want to make sure we're having the conversations. And I know from experience that doesn't always happen. I'm still hearing a lot of grumbling about the traffic circles. So anyway, just want to make sure that we're taking all that into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you for that.
Councillor Keating.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to quickly add my enthusiasm to the chorus of my colleagues who are beating the drum about the need for increased housing along the riverfront. I want to thank staff for the tremendous work. I look forward to seeing this, seeing the multitude of housing, affordable market rate. I do wish there were more blended opportunities, but I appreciate the aesthetics of both new units being similar. So I just want to double down my appreciation to staff, and maybe it's less of an agency question and more of a broad council question. But as we rapidly approach the completion of the Riverfront Plaza, I would just like to reiterate my enthusiasm for future Riverfront World Athletic Games celebrations and/or anchoring a renewal of the Eugene celebration at the heart of our downtown Riverfront Plaza area.
Thank you, councillors. I'll briefly add myself to the queue and just say that this is a great update. Really appreciate the detail included from all of staff and the many years of work by staff, this body. A lot of people out in the community have been dreaming about these futures for a very long time. And it is really exciting to think about it wasn't that many years ago that the downtown riverfront was surrounded by razor wire and was completely publicly inaccessible with no uses other than a utility operations yard. 2 weeks ago, I saw a 4J school bus pull up to the Heartwood and drop off some kiddos after school. And I just wanted to share with this body because I sometimes think we're forgetting the diversity of families and households that will find and choose their home in the center of Eugene. And it is really exciting to think of a project dedicated to affordable housing being added to that mix and having a mixed use, mixed income neighborhood with so much access to amenities that make for a high quality of life and a high degree of affordability. So lots of appreciation there. And we'll add my thoughts, having walked the corridor from downtown to Central and University area many times, and with many people visiting our community, it's pretty treacherous through this stretch. And people who are coming here for business or for events, I think are a little bit baffled by the state of the connection between our city center and the University of Oregon. And it is quite dangerous. And it's wonderful to think of an opportunity for it to be much better in helping us to accomplish so many of our goals. So thank you for this update and a sense of how progress might be made on that front. With that conclusion of discussion, seeing no more hands from council, I will now turn to the agency president to put a motion forward.
I had to turn on my volume, Mayor. One thing before I put the motion forward, I noted that Councilor Clark wanted to disaggregate the suggested motion and that for us to vote on each of these in a separate context. Is there a will to do that, or do you just want me to put forth the motion as it exists?
I decided against that effort, by the way, just from the comments of my client or my colleagues. I suspect there isn't the will to separate them, FYI.
Okay, fine. I'll go ahead. Move to approve the use of urban renewal funds for the projects in attachment B to this AIS and to authorize the agency director to take all actions necessary to transfer ownership of the real property shown in attachment C to the city of Eugene.
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussions in the agency board? Councillor Keating.
Thank you, Mayor. I look forward to passing this, but I just have a question I think it's a question for Catherine for legal counsel. Is there a reason that the words take all actions necessary are in the proposed or in the motion? And I ask because I don't recall previous agency motions, urban renewal agency motions, having language like take all actions necessary. And would it be sufficient just to simply authorize the agency director to transfer ownership of the real property shown in attachment C to the city of Eugene?
That is language that has been used in previous motions to transfer property. It's kind of intended to be a little bit broader to encompass anything that may need to happen in order to get it transferred, potentially, negotiations or something like that. And so it has been used in the past. It is just slightly broader. Would it thwart the abilities to accomplish the end goal if you changed the language to what you're saying? And I don't believe so. There's nothing terribly magic about the language. It's just intended to be a little bit more encompassing.
Thank you. I stand corrected. If it's been used in the past, then I don't have any heartburn over it. And maybe it just strikes a chord considering the last month of activity coming from the White House. So I will take my concerns off the table and look forward to passing this motion.
Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Greg, for asking about the comment that I had made. I could tell from the comments of my colleagues that this is not something likely to go the way I would hope. I just wanted to add clarity to my initial comment that I agree with everyone who talked about the need for the work on Broadway that absolutely needs to be done. It's, for me, simply a matter of how best to pay for that work. And the use of tax increment funds, urban renewal funds, to do so didn't seem like the wisest way to go because we have such a limited amount and because the need for us to invest in housing seems so great. And I didn't want to take those dollars off the table for what I'm hoping will be a more robust effort as time goes on to see use of those funds to leverage greater housing built in our downtown and riverfront areas. So mine was only a disagreement with using those funds in this way, not that the effort doesn't need to be done. Thank you.
Any further discussion? And with that, I'll now take a vote for this motion. All in favor? See 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 hands. 0 opposed, and the motion passes by a vote of 8-0. Thank you all. This concludes our agenda for today. So I will now close the February 19th, 2025 Urban Renewal Agency work session and we are adjourned. Thank you.